Hello, finally I decided to make another lesson, a separate lesson on f3, 5. Wanted first to get all bishop e3, f3 in one material, but there was just far too much, and I believe that f3, 5 it's so important in nowadays theory, and positions are so complicated and difficult to understand. A lot of very important tricks with move orders, so better that I do it separately, and there is more than enough material for a lesson on this f3, 5. So now knight b3 has to be played. Knight d2 is really not good. The knight is not doing anything here. Bishop e6, g4, h6. Black is getting ready for d5, and well, he's at least equal. So knight b3 is forced. So first here the move order. I advise you to start with bishop e6, but if you are playing bishop e7 systems, then you can also do bishop e7, but the point is that bishop e6 you will have to play in any case. After bishop e3, for instance, you will have to play bishop e6. So I think bishop e6 is simpler, and then it depends if you play in some other system than bishop e7, then you must start with bishop e6, bishop e3. So first, what are the systems? Here, I will separate it in three packages. One, I will start with knight bd7. Here I will show, sort of rare systems, the move orders, ideas with move orders. After knight bd7, it's also not so easy to understand. For instance, some they play queen d2 here, some they play g4. It might make difference, depends on which line black wants to play. Actually here black has a choice of the line, because white setup is anyways against anything, almost anything, bishop e3, queen d2, g4 on castle. Yeah, then white has quite a serious choice of systems. So knight bd2 will be the most boring part of it. So all those move orders and not the most fashionable systems. Then h5 is a separate system which is now quite popular, and I can recommend you actually to play it with black. Of course, maybe objectively white is a bit better there, but there is not so much direct theory. Extremely complicated, strategically complex positions, and perfectly playable for black. But also for white, because in general white has chances for some advantage after h5. So basically this variation is very interesting to play for both sides, for those of you who do not want to study too many forced lines. And the third package is bishop e7. So this system, the main system, I will show you this. So actually the main position nowadays, the most popular position is this one. Okay, so then also there is a certain question how to achieve it with both colors. Well, with black it's not difficult. White, black can try to trick white, even though I believe that if you already decide to play it, I would advise you not to try tricking with move orders, because actually it can fire back. I mean, in fact, there are quite a number of systems when black is trying some subtle move order, but most of the time actually they are not better, or actually they are worse, even if they are not refuted, but worse than this main system. So but anyway, it will be your choice. And for the white color, well, white has to know really a lot here. So let's start. Let's start with h5 system. Actually, I quite like it in many senses, maybe because of I'm a veteran already, and I also, if I would be playing chess, I wouldn't like to learn all those sharp lines, because you will see the main line is really crazy, where your power of your engine is maybe more important than strength of your play. So h5 is for lazy people who want to play and not to get too bad position. This I can guarantee you, it will not be too bad for black. So white has a choice of three actually setups. One is just to start playing in this bishop e2 system style. So bishop e2, e5, knight b3. Black has a little bit strange move h5 played, but in fact it's not a bad move. Strangely enough, it actually makes a lot of sense to put pawn on h5. So knight bd7, in this or that way, white is playing a4, so whatever both sides are doing, then they will get this position. Let's say castle rook c8, a5, h4, queen d2. That is the most logical. And here, I think there was a very interesting game, Morozevich-Sadler, long time ago, I think 1999, and Matthew, he decided to play this plan, g6, and then trying to get the king to g7. Actually quite interesting, just leaving the rook on h8, because this pawn on h4 is actually quite bothering for white. Because when white is will try to maneuver his knight, you know already here that there are some kind of maneuvers like this sometimes coming, but black can get some h3, some quite annoying counterplay on the king side. Also, if you play king h1, sometimes knight h5, knight g3 can come, so its position is very complicated. Objectively, probably slightly better for white, but it's such, well, you can win with black also. It's just the one who is playing better will win here, because it's going to be a big fight here, that's for sure. So let's say the game went knight c1, queen c7, so you see Morozevich, of course, knows this classical plan. Rook d1, king f8, bishop f1, king g7, then he played bishop f2, then there was a, I think, rapid chess game. Grishuk won with white already this position. Well, here there is a lot of maneuvering, so both sides are trying to find the best moment to strike. White maybe to maneuver his knight to d5 or to play knight d5. Black to organize some counterplay, maybe sometimes b5, ab, knight b6 might work, sometimes preparing d5 or h3, d5, of course, under certain circumstances. So a very complicated, perfectly playable position for black, in my opinion. But engines actually like even to castle. I kind of like my rook on h8, but actually castling, strangely enough, is also fine, because it's impossible to get to this pawn on h4. Somehow it's very difficult to attack it. If bishop f2, there is always knight h5 coming. Let's say rook fd1 is logical move, queen c7, just stopping knight d5, even though it's not really a big threat, but just putting pressure and then maneuvering around. For instance, rook ac1, rook e8. Maybe at some point knight f8, knight g6 might be a plan. I checked how engine is trying to play this position. Actually is moving, it's not doing anything with both colors, not really much. But from time to time I see there's some tricks are coming. All of a sudden black or white starts to do some, most of the time black. I believe I would be personally perfectly happy with this position with black as the outcome of the opening, even if engine maybe says 0-2 for white here, 0-3. I don't care. I think, well, I have a decent position with a certain potential winning chances. So I think bishop e2 is not too dangerous. Very serious, of course, is the plan queen d2, knight d7, long castle, and actually very logical, obviously, because obviously because black played h5, it will not be so easy to castle short. But in fact, it's not so dramatic. Sometimes black castles anyway. So rook c8 is played, king b1, bishop e7. I think that is, by the way, important, this move order. Better to start with bishop e7, because if you start with b5, this position might already be a bit dangerous. Knight d5, and let's say after bishop d5, e d5, knight b6, queen a5, knight bd2, bishop f2, and then because of you weakened a bit this pawn structure on the queen side, and white has a big development advantage, he can actually black can get into trouble. So just better start with bishop e7, and this is what most of players are doing. You will have time for b5, white is not going to play e4 here, so bishop e7. Now quite a serious line is knight d5, but here you take already with a knight, e d5, bishop f5, and again, yeah, with a bishop, with a pawn on b5 instead of bishop e7, then white always have knight a5, knight c6 maneuver, after, of course, protecting the pawn on c2. Here it's not on the agenda, so bishop d3 has to be played, takes on d3, queen takes d3, and now actually very important move, bishop g5. Otherwise, if you don't manage to get out with this bishop, white can have some plus, just playing knight d2, g4, but bishop g5, there are many games here, and black is just in time dynamically, to get counterplays. Of course, I would already prefer my pawn on h7, but still it's not a drama with the pawn h5, so bishop g5 very important, and black is okay. Then white has, played many different things. For instance, h4 in this position. This setup is possible. b5, bishop g5. Quite interesting setup, but very often you can already castle. And because black is also very quick with his counterplay, knight b6, b4, knight c4, so g4 is not yet made. For instance, bishop e2, knight b6. I analyzed this position, just wanted to see what engines are thinking about it, and the assessment is always around equal, and but the kind of spirit of the game, I don't mind with black, because very often black starts to, white has to be also careful not to get worse here, because this attack g4, g4, you're not even threatening to take, really, not even mentioning that black can take hg. So it's far from made. I believe the most serious setup is to play bishop d3, and also the most popular. Black is playing b5, so black plays his useful moves for the moment. h3, h4. White has to start doing something, because black just wants queen c7, knight b6, getting the knight maybe to c4, a4, I don't know. At some point d5 coming, so white doesn't have so much play actually in this position, strangely enough. Therefore, this is very logical. h3, of course, g4 is a threat, h4 and f4. Of course, you put h3, h4 just to cover the g4 square. So, and here, this position is very complicated. I analyzed it also. It seems that black is holding here. I think it's actually dynamic equality, but extremely sharp position. In fact, with a big surprise, I realized that I played it with white in a Monaco tournament against Vishy Anand some about 20 years ago. And Vishy played queen c7. Also maybe knight h5 might be interesting. Looks a little bit strange, but maybe not so bad. Bishop c4, and then at least you get your knight to g3, another one to f6. But it's a little strange, this way of playing. I think queen c7 is doing fine. This is the main move in the position. Now black wants to play knight b6. So let's say if white is playing some useful move like a3, then knight b6 is already okay. And f5, always bishop c4 is possible. This position is always very unclear, because the pawn on e4 often will become a target. Sometimes queen b7, this pawn is weak, and because of the pawn on h4, and black haven't castled yet, so he will not get mated. It's dynamically complicated, typical Sicilian position. So rook ha1, this is probably the best move, and this is what I played, because it sort of stops knight b6. Actually, we should play knight b6 anyway, but that is not too good, because I played knight d5, and black has nothing better than to take and rook h5. And here I could get an advantage just playing knight a5. I did something wrong, and it was a draw finally, but here white is better. White is clearly better, so knight b6 is not the right move. But I think the best move is actually castle. Castle, close your eyes, pray, and just castle. And neither engines, neither me, trying different moves which are not first line of engines, I couldn't really manage to mate. Position is awfully complicated, but f5, of course, is a principal move. If a3, it makes sense to stop before, but here because black is also quick with his counterplay. I think queen b7 is perfectly fine. Sometimes you want b4, opening up the c line for the rook, but also knight c5 is already here perfectly fine for black. So probably f5 is the best move. bishop c4, and yeah, it's tricky. For instance, g4, hg, rook g1, b4. There is no mate. It looks like I'm just going to mate black king. No, it's very difficult, much more difficult than it looks, and it always somehow, I checked quite a lot this position, always somehow finally gets to some position with best play of both sides, which engine assesses as equal, and it's a complete mess. It's very complicated. So here, so maybe then to play a3, because black already wants b4 and start pushing pawns, also a5, a4, sometimes d5, so white has to maybe stop this counterplay. But after a3 you can play rook f8 also, but also d5 actually works according to computer, and then with the idea EDB4 somehow. So this position is complicated. You need to know, if you want to play it with black, the move orders exactly. You have to start with bishop e7 before b5, then to know when to castle, when not to castle. So it is a bit dangerous, this position for black, of course, with the king on e8. But after all, yeah, what is not dangerous in Najdorf? So, but I think it's perfectly playable, and also there is a fair chance, to win a game also. So, but maybe the most popular now among top players, and maybe the most dangerous move, is knight d5 in this position. Now, well, black has to take with a bishop to play the structure, because, well, knight bd7 is not good, because here after c4 white is just better already. Black sometimes in these positions manage to get b5, but not here, obviously, so white has just a positional advantage. So knight takes d5 is also not good. Here takes bishop d3, and white gets a fantastic version, extra tempi, and here with a pawn on h5, yeah, white should be better. So bishop takes d5 should be taken, e d5, knight bd7, queen d2, logical, and now g6. So that is the idea. That is why you better play h5 system on move 8 before playing bishop e7, because in this position it's very important that the bishop gets to g7, to this diagonal. Now I think white's only chance to fight for advantage is to play long castle, because this solid play, castle, black has a fantastic version of Najdorf typical position, because all his moves, bishop already on g7, then he can get e4 at some point, rook e8, e4, perfect position, at least equal. So black must play long castle. And here there were many games of strong players. I was surprised to see how many games of Linier Dominguez was with both colors, especially with white here. And he plays extremely precisely this position. It's quite clear to me that he analyzed it very well. He won quite a number of games with white. Normally black is playing bishop g7, but frankly I'm not quite sure that knight b6 is not a forced equality, or at least very close to equal. Black doesn't like to play it so much because, well, it's a little tiny worse, and actually black usually is playing this h5 system to get a complicated position. But from other point of view, it's a very principled move. If knight d5 represents a serious challenge for black, and then, well, maybe it makes sense to try just to kill this line with knight b6. And I think it's quite okay. I looked at the theory, checked a bit the position. I couldn't find any flirtation or any even real chance for white to get an advantage. Okay, maybe some very tiny plus in some endgame. That's maximum white can get. So knight b6 is a principal move. The idea is that, well, the pawn is hanging. If queen a5, that is very important. Black has bishop h6. And exchanging these bishops, black should be okay, even though position is still playable and complicated. Probably queen d2 is the best move here. Rook h8 and f4. I mean, strategically, black is having a very good position. It's just that his king is on the center still. But here, knight d7, for example, and then maybe king getting to f8, g7. I mean, sharp, complicated, but very double-edged position. White can also get worse, potentially, here. So queen a5, I don't think it's a big danger. Then king b1 is usually played here. If bishop g5, trying to save this pawn somehow, then bishop e7 is okay. And, well, you're not planning really to exchange like this a bishop on f6 just to save the pawn on d5. So white usually is playing king b1 and just, let's say, knight b takes d5, bishop g5, bishop e7. This is an important position in this line. And here, white tried, for example, Leko played g3 move here. Okay, playable, of course. I mean, it's obvious that white has compensation for the pawn, but there is nothing, I guess, queen c7 looks logical here. I mean, white is not really risking, despite the fact that he is a pawn down, because he gets always, and very often he can get back this pawn, like playing c4, taking on f6, taking on d6, but most of the time it leads to a very equal endgames. So bishop d3, I think, was played by Dominguez, and he might trust. Queen c7, rook e1, knight b6. I think there was a game Dominguez Duda. It went on very logically and ended in a draw. So I mean, engines also give 0-2 for white, 0-1. I mean, seeing that position is more or less equal. Of course, it's very still complex, a lot of play, but I don't see any big danger for black. So yeah, pay attention on this knight b6. Of course, it's comfortable for white in the sense that there is no risk, but well, not easy to prove anything, any advantage. But the main move is bishop g7, king b1. Yeah, this is a tabia, very complicated again position. I mean, complicated in the sense of extremely subtle. Because black actually has potentially very dangerous counterplay, because he will get e4 at some point, and then b5, knight b6. Just imagine then, okay, mate is just coming. Yeah, knight to a4 sometimes, and rook c8, and just you cannot really protect your king. But okay, he needs time for it. And white, well, if you want to play it with white, and I think it's prosperous with white. I mean, first of all, check games of Dominguez. I think he's playing it extremely well. And second, yeah, you have to know exactly how to play against which move order. For example, Dominguez Giri played queen c7 here against Dominguez. And now, before castling, now Dominguez played it perfect, because I analyzed this position and I realized that this is the best way to play with white is bishop e2, castles g4, rook c8, and now the only move which can fight for advantage with white is rook c1. Okay, you need to know it. You better know it. It's not easy to think that, I mean, rook c1 looks strange, and the game went hg, fg, a5, and so on. I think, yeah, finally, I believe Dominguez won this game. I think it was like g5, if I remember well, a4, gf, knight takes f6, and now h4. Okay, giving up this knight, and okay, its position, it seems that finally it's in white's favor here. But the play is extremely sharp. It's very much about tempi, who is first. Then castles is possible move, and now white has to hurry. h3, very important move, h3, just to start very quickly assault on the king side, because black is also quick. And now, for instance, b5, g4, knight b6 would have been very, very nice, but very important move is bishop g5 here. Otherwise black is at least equal, but after bishop g5, now h4, for instance, is the best move according to computer, because otherwise you can get mated. Bishop takes h4, e4, and actually here maybe white is only a bit better. I mean, no more than that. For instance, f4, knight takes e4. Actually, this endgame after bishop d8, knight takes d2 check, black has enough compensation because his bishop is very powerful. So queen e1 is played, black is playing queen e8, and finally c3 and so on. Well, complicated position, but still always white keeps certain plus, at least, but with a very, very precise and best play. And maybe it also makes sense to try queen c7, g4, rook fc8. So anyways, this position, I think white has chances for some advantage. Black has his counter chances. Maybe it's, well, not totally equalized, but Najdorf you don't play to make a draw and to equalize and make a forced draw. You want a game, and here you will get a game with black, and one mistake of each side, and also white. If white loses one tempi, allows black to start his counter attack, it can be extremely strong. Yeah, so here I guess rook c1 is a move maybe. So yeah, this is a state of affairs. In h5 line, I believe knight d5 is the main try for white. But first of all, if you remember that knight b6 was actually quite difficult to prove an advantage with white. And secondly, this position is very rich, and it's still definitely the last word haven't been said about this position. So perfectly playable system, but also good that for white you will definitely find something to play against it. So it's not a system which will cause you big trouble. Yeah, you will get a playable position with a certain chance for advantage. Then let's start with knight bd7 now. So now it's a boring part. I'm sorry, it's about the move orders. So knight bd7, I want to recommend you, if you are going to play the main line with black, then and this line with bishop e7, then maybe simpler, even though it doesn't really matter, but bishop e7 is kind of forcing it, because white cannot even play g4 now because d5 simply strong, and after g5 d4 here black is just better. So white has to play queen d2. Now d5 is not enough to equalize. This position is slightly worse for black, so not recommended. Then you can castle. Again, g4, d5 comes. Knight d5 is totally harmless. You just play bishop f5, and of course without pawn on h5, black is at least equal. I mean, no problem at all. So now white castles. And you can play knight bd7. There is anyway nothing really better than playing g4. There is no king b1 first, but anyway, g4 will have to be played. It's a strategical idea of white to push the pawns here. And b5, and this is, you reach this tabia. Yeah, you reach this important position. Just since we already discussing it, there is also line a5, which was quite popular at that time, and sometime I believe, yeah, some 20 years ago maybe, but it's very dubious. You can check it, but also with white I can recommend you to play just a4, very simple chess. King b1, well, black has to do something like that. G4, just to try to stop d5 somehow. Rook c8, g5, knight h5, bishop b5, like this. And it looks like black has some play with a knight on b4, but actually, yeah, I can tell you engines are given +1 here, very stable +1, and black doesn't really have too much counterplay. So I think this is well, it is playable a5. It's very tricky. I mean, playable on a certain level, but I believe white is just better. So if you play bishop e7, then probably you will get to this line, which will be the last one I'm going to cover, because it's the craziest line, and it will be fun. I promise you. But first, knight bd7. So here, yeah, that is also, it's boring but important part now, because you also, with either color you play, it's better even if you play, let's say, h5 variation with black. If you're talking with black, you better know all the nuances. And of course, if you are playing it with white, it's good that you would understand the move orders. So here, white can start with queen d2, or he can start with g4. Well, after both options, black has quite an important sideline. So you have to choose which one you prefer to give, and to give to your opponent if you are white. And after both of those moves, of course, black can still play bishop e7 and move to this main line. So queen d2. If queen d2, then b5. Again, we are not talking now about bishop e7, yeah, because that is transposition. So b5, and after, let's say, a4. Now b4, I mean, this is looking dangerous, but actually black seems to be okay. There were many games on top level. I think Garry Kasparov, Anand played like this with black. And knight d5, very direct line. Knight b6. Black is just in time, very typical idea to attack the d5 pawn. So engines are giving now something new. Nobody played like this at that time. Just this pawn sacrifice, bishop e7, knight d2, just putting bishop on d3. Still, assassin has more or less equal this position. Maybe it can be an idea. I don't know. Doesn't look too dangerous, but it's typical, yeah, typical compensation. White is just trying to maybe exchange the knights at some point, and even pawn down. He's having a lot of control on white squares, having no risk, but also usually he cannot win such positions. But anyway, bishop takes b6 is the move usually, theoretical move, a5, queen b7. You can see there are many games like this. It seems that black has enough play, and modern engines confirm this assessment. So a4 is probably harmless. Then long castle. Long castle, and now you can play bishop e7, transposing. You can play h5, but maybe here it's white might have already this idea with knight d5. Yeah, has to be checked. Maybe, yeah, I was trying to go rook c8, bishop e7. It's a bit too subtle, but anyway. But usually, if you already play h5 system, usually you play h5 immediately. Yeah, that's how. On move 8, because here white also has g4, and you have to learn completely another system. So normally, if already h5 is not played on move 8, it's not going to be played. This is a small advice for the white players that you shouldn't worry about your opponent playing h5 in other maybe more favorable moment for him. Probably he will not. So b5, long castle, but here there is a sideline which is knight b6. Knight b6 is sideline, but actually it is, to my understanding, it's a bit dubious. So I wouldn't recommend you with black to play this sideline, because now queen f2 also was very popular. Actually, I remember was analyzing this variation for quite a while. Because Garry Kasparov was playing this at that time, was playing e4. It was just maybe beginning of the century, 2002, 2003. Many games were played on this line. I always felt it's very dubious, but was not so easy to find a clear advantage. Now, of course, engines are stronger, so basically this, still I wouldn't say that it's totally bad, but it looks extremely dubious. For instance, if knight fd7, f4, rook c8, f5, bishop c4, and now if black is holding, then really, strategically his position is very dangerous, because he doesn't really have so much pressure on the e4 pawn anymore. But maybe he can hold. At least I remember there was a game of Swidler-Gelfand here, and I think Swidler won with white. The black's position is not my cup of tea. I don't trust this position, but again, playable. Maybe you can try to make it work with black. And otherwise, knight c4, it's also very dubious. Bishop c4, b takes c4. I remember how many games were played here, and it was very important position 20 years ago. But actually, first of all, knight c5 is very dangerous. Strangely enough, it's not as bad as it looks for black. But nowadays, I think very strong engines are playing knight a5. And it's not a blunder, of course, because after queen takes a5, the queen is trapped, a3. And queen d7 has to be played, and white starts to play g4. The line goes on. And if black is even holding, then really by miracle. It's really like on the edge, because white has g5, knight d5 ideas. Extremely dangerous position, not really recommended. So queen d2 is possible, perfectly playable way to start with queen d2. Black can of course play here also h5, transpose. But quite often white is playing g4 here, starting with g4, just not to give this line. But then black has another interesting line. Bishop e7, as we know, queen d2 is a transposition. b5 was supposed to be quite interesting, but actually it's almost refuted now with new Silicon friends. They found a very, very nice idea, which was already played by Aranyan, I think, recently. Because the main theory was going like this: g5, b4, knight d5, takes, bishop f5, bishop d3. Also, by the way, not easy for black. The system takes, bishop e7, h4, and then black would push a pawn, white would push pawns on the other side. And then sometimes black in these positions trying to play f5 just to defend against some mating attack. Complicated game. Probably black is holding there. That was the final verdict. So that's why b5 was an interesting system. So because if maybe after queen d2, black has some, I think, some options, maybe even before d5 and so on. So yeah, and g5 before. Yeah, that was the idea. But actually a4, it seems that it's very strong. It's not completely over after a4, but seems that white is better here. Because before knight d5, bishop d5, e d5, knight b6. And here, well, there was some theory. White was trying different things, couldn't really manage to get anything here. But now engines, they found this bishop g1 move. Yeah, I mean, on g1, not even on f2, but g1. I don't know why on g1. I'm sure there is some justification in some long line, yeah, in some long variation. But here the point that this is a way to protect the pawn, actually a very elegant way, because if you take with this knight a5, if you take with other knight g5, yeah, comes. So you cannot take the pawn. If bishop e7, a5 is very strong. Again, you cannot take the pawn. And of course, if you come back after a5, then you will quickly lose this a4 pawn. Queen d2, rook a4, and just... So h6, and now f4. This is considered to be the best according to engine. Also, that is what Aranyan played. But actually, also queen d2 is quite dangerous, I believe. Knight b d5, h4. At least my friend couldn't also find a way for black to equalize here. So maybe also dangerous. But f4 was played by Aranyan. The idea is that ef4, queen f3. So white develops long castle. Of course, he has two very powerful bishops. I mean, black's position is extremely dangerous. So bishop e7, and now I will just show you the best line according to the engine is a5, knight d7, queen f3. Yeah, here Aranyan made a mistake. He took on e5. He still won, but here the game gets very unclear. But after queen f3, white is just better. ef, for example, long castle. Knight e5, take on f4, knight g4, king b1. Nobody cares about pawns because bishop will just get his position on b6. Knight d4, knight c6 comes, knight d4, knight f5. White has a fantastic, active pieces and he is better simply. So I believe after g4, b5 seems to be dubious. h5 you cannot play already. The system. Then h6, by the way, just wanted to mention that it's always not good. Here, this is an exception because very often black plays h6 after g4. Here, it just doesn't work because white castles, and then anyway, white will get his h4, g5 one day. The point that with a pawn on e5, actually g5 is not such a big threat because knight can always stay on h5 and then, okay, protect the flank and has a prospect to get to f4. One day. So here h6 you never play, yeah, in this variation if you're playing black. But then there is a knight b6 system. Yeah, this system was also extremely popular. Kasparov again, well, of course, not only him, actually even I think I played it with black. There was a short period of time, at some point I played Najdorf and I played it against very young Karyakin and was suffering. I managed by miracle make a draw. He was already very strong, Sergei, even though he was 14 or 15 only, but he was very strong player. So knight b6, well, the idea is that actually black is threatening d5 simply, and white has nothing better than to play g5. Actually, it's only move to fight for advantage. And then, okay, black of course gets this control after knight h5, queen d2, rook c8, long castle, bishop e7, rook g1. All those moves are very useful, very logical. Always were played. Castles, king b1, and this is complicated position. Well, it's playable, but again, you can study it if you want, because with black you have a chance of getting this position. With black, after g4 you get it more or less. You study, you have enough of very strong games of very strong players here. It's, yeah, again, objectively a bit better for white. It's very difficult to play with black. You have really to know this position by heart, really to know all the details, all the nuances, because one wrong move and at some point, like my game with Karyakin, I remember, okay, so I did something wrong, I just got a very bad position quickly. I think queen c7 is supposed to be the best move, at least that's what I played, and also that's what Kasparov was playing, because if you start with g6, also there were many games, now queen f2, knight c4 takes, let's say knight d5, and this position, even though not so clear because the knight on h5 is pretty good. So from one point of view, it's out of the game. From other point of view, it totally blocks white's attack. Yeah, so white doesn't have attack. White is now more playing for a positional advantage. And black very often in these positions trying to take on d5, rook d5, and at some point trying to play f6 or f5, trying to strangely enough create a counterplay on the king side. And actually white is trying to create play on the queen side, even if his king is on b1. Here it's not anymore typical Sicilian with attacks. It's a very complicated positional game, but again, with knight on h5 and the d5 square, it's not easy for black to play, but maybe more or less acceptable position. And I think queen c7, h4, g6. Now there were many moves. For some reason, only thing I can tell that nowadays engines like to play queen h2 in this position. For some reason, they think it's a little bit more precise than queen f2. Also playing some strange move like a3, just kind of pretending that black doesn't really have a useful move. All in all, with white, I would be quite happy to play this position. I mean, I think that it's, white has quite decent chances. I mean, I know at least, even if it's not better objectively, even if black with very, very precise play can equalize here, but I know how difficult to play with black this position, and one wrong move, and it can end pretty badly for black. So white can sometimes push f4 if under some circumstances, or just strategically after knight c4 takes, and sometimes knight, again, this maneuver, knight c1, d3 before d5. So yeah, not a bulletproof line for black. So that's the side lines. I mean, frankly, advising you from the black side, I don't see why to play, because then you need to learn, first of all, after queen d2, you need to learn a sideline, maybe this, castle knight b6, but it was also not so sound. And against g4, you need to learn this knight b6, which also is actually a lot of theory and very positional play. Maybe not too bad, of course. Kasparov wouldn't have played a bad line, and he played it for quite some time. But still, 2 lines. I mean, if you already want to avoid sharp, complicated lines, which we will see in this bishop e7 variation, then at least play h5 already. With white, I think you have more or less the most important knowledge. Of course, black tried almost everything in this position after knight bd7, queen c7, first rook c8, without b5, with b5, but there is nothing. Those what I show you is the most important. All other experiments were not extremely successful or do not make so much sense for black. So now we are finally getting to this position. So with white, bishop e7, you must play queen d2. Castles, you must first castle. And now knight d7, g4, b5. So this is a very important tabia nowadays. Very interesting. And let's have a look at this and investigate it really deeply. I'm going to show you quite a number of variations, because it's important. I mean, of course, you can see all those games, but I will explain you the move orders, the tricks, what is the current state of theory, because actually white, in my opinion, doesn't have any way out from this position in f3, e5 line, and it's very direct. So if black manages to kind of sterilize this line, then I don't know what white is going to do after e5, because he really there is. But for the moment, actually, it's getting very close. For the moment, I don't see any advantage for white, and there was so many games played in this position. But okay, there are still some tries. What are the possible options for white? Knight d5 is very safe, but it's practically a forced draw. Bishop takes d5, e d5, knight b6, otherwise black is much worse, so that's the only way to play with black. Knight a5, of course, bishop takes b6 is not an option. I mean, in this type of position, black is normally just better because of the black square bishop, and white has no attack, of course, here. So knight a5, knight f takes d5, a very forced variation, not too difficult to remember. Takes on b6, knight b6, white gets the pawn back. But queen g5 check, queen d2, queen f6. There were a few games, completely equal position. So more or less a wait for white to force a draw. Well, I mean, to force a very equal position, which should end in a draw. You can still win it with black or with white, but normally it's unlikely. So that is already sterilized knight d5 move. There is a a3 move. Again, it very often leads to transpositions. Well, first g5, then a3, or first a3. This or that way, because black wanted to play b4. Finally, black wants to play here knight b6. White is trying to play knight a5, rook c8. d5 is on the agenda, so g5, knight h5. King b1 is always a useful move. g6, again, always useful move. And this position is also can actually happen via different move orders. There was some rook g1 move here, but it doesn't seem to be too dangerous. Actually, h4. h4 is a serious option. Probably maybe white wants to get bishop h3 at some point. And here it's a very, very important line. There were two very, very good games. Vashela Graf played with black, and also there was a game Aranian Carlson Rapid Chess. Here knight g3, rook g1, knight f1, rook f1, and now very important move, knight a4, takes on a4, ba4, and this position first engine gives +1 for white, and he sees a very powerful attack after h5, but then starts to drop. He understands that actually black can parry this, playing queen c7 or queen d7. Magnus played queen d7. It's, to me, completely clear that both Maxim and Magnus analyzed this position, so they were in their preparation. I don't know, Maxim played queen c7, also got a normal position, rook e8 and bishop f8. That is the way. After hg, fg, queen protects the h7 pawn. And white cannot really mate. And from other point of view, of course, position is rather tactical. I mean, black is holding quite narrowly, yeah, because it's h7 pawn, but it holds. Actually, engine says it's equal. I suppose queen d7, it looks more accurate. I don't know, because the game went in the same fashion. Then here, to me, looks like maybe queen on d7 is a bit more, better place. I don't know. Probably it doesn't make such a big difference. Here, this game was won by Magnus. It was bishop d2, rook c7, bishop b4, rook b8. Of course, a lot of tactics, in the air, of course. But rook on c7, you see, very important. Now, after hg, fg, queen can go out because the rook already protecting the h7 pawn. But it's also very dangerous for white. I think engine somewhere tries to play c4, c5, and thinks it's equal at some point. But I think rook d3 probably is a mistake. After queen b5, it's, finally Magnus went on to win this position, because I don't know if it's already better for black, but white doesn't have actually play, because hg, fg, there is no mate, and then what to do? Knight on a5 is stuck. So this important line seems to be holding well for black. In general, there were so many games already in this variation that, almost all sensible moves were already tried. So then I saw they were playing rook g1 here also. There was some games, but this is, I don't quite get it. I mean, it's a bit too subtle for me, because in any case, white is going to play g5, knight h5, so white to start with rook g1, but I'm sure it will lead to transpositions anyways. So g5 is played. At least transpositions in knight h5 variation. So now black has a choice, a very, very concrete, sharp, and extremely fascinating variation b4, or knight h5, more positional. I think actually knight h5 is less principal, but this moment of time, it seems to be holding. The only problem that you need to have a good memory here again, because this position seemingly it looks very strategical, but actually it's quite direct. So after knight h5, there are what moves? Let's say rook g1, knight b6. It would probably transpose. So normally what is played, h4, I doubt here, especially before black played g6. It looks strange because, first of all, I'm not sure rook c8 is bad, but secondly, something like that takes a5. And black also has actually very, very dangerous attack on the king side, especially kicking this knight before a4 with tempest. So I wouldn't do this with white. So white has a choice of playing one very direct long line, but it seems to be a draw, or playing just a very complicated and clear position. I don't see any other choice really here for white. So let's start with direct king b1, knight b6. Again, maybe queen c7 is possible, but the best moves according to theory is this: knight b6, knight a5. Also knight d5 is possible, but then black already takes with a knight, bishop f5, and here, as you already saw sometimes, that black starts to get counterplay knight a5. It seems that white is entering on c6, but suddenly black starts to play on the king side. He has a counterplay on the f line, and there were quite many games here. Position is just very unclear. I mean, just complicated, unclear, and I don't know who is, which side I would take if I would be playing this position. So, I mean that in this unclear situation, white is, I think, not any better. Not worse also, but black totally solved his opening problems. Then knight a5. This is very serious. Rook c8. Now again, you see that after a3, g6 we transpose. So this position can get via many different move orders. You remember these games of Vachier and Magnus. Black was doing fine here. But the principal move is knight d5. Here, there were already, I think, every move was tried possible. White also doesn't have, so much play, and has to play with a3 with a knight d5, I suspect, because black also wants to get b4, and d5 is on the agenda sometimes in this position. So probably knight d5 is logical. Now already, of course, knight d5, e d5, of course, bishop f5, already knight c6 comes. So bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, queen takes a5. And this position was very important. I remember even 20 years ago, I analyzed this position, and it seemed like white has initiative, but was difficult to find an advantage. Now with many more games and powerful engines, I think it's a clear verdict that black holds a draw in all lines, but with very precise play and with very good memory, which actually didn't serve well Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, who actually recently there was a very important game for the theory of this variation, Vachier-Lagrave, and I think Dominguez just checked the memory, so he played in a very principled way, because sometimes white is just playing bishop d3, g6, and then c3, and just continues to play this position. But actually, it's in a way it's like a positional draw, because nobody can do anything, nobody can improve his position. White is quite safe despite his pawn down, because he has full control on white squares, but black is just there. You can check games, I think, again, of Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. He played it correctly, and I had a feeling that at some point, there will be just some 3 times repetition. Repeating bishop c2, bishop d3, bishop c2, I couldn't find, and engines also cannot find any constructive plan for white. So c4 is the principal move. Knight f4, now black's play is very forced. I mean, you have really to do this, takes, h4. These are the best moves, don't ask me why. Now queen a4 is very important move here, because b3, I think black is just in time with queen b4, because of course white just wants to attack bishop d3, queen a4, if g6, h5. So it's really a matter of tempo, this position, but it seems to work. So bishop d3 was played by Dominguez, bc4, queen e4, g6, bishop c2, and now I think so far Maxim managed to recall his analysis, and here actually he forgot. I think he played the most logical move, queen d7, but after h5 white is already much better here. Don't ask me why, but queen e8, for some reason you have to play queen e8 here, and this is a forced draw. Basically it leads to a forced draw, queen e8. And I also checked carefully with this variation, I mean this position. I don't think white has anything. It looks nice. Black has to play only moves, quite often, but it's a draw, in my opinion. So then white, if he wants to play, he can play a complicated position, knight d5, to start with knight d5, takes, on d5. So now the point is that after knight b6, white already has knight a5, and after knight d5 there is knight c6, move possible. So that's why black has to hurry with his counterplay on this flank, because white wants just to enter with a knight. So f5, maybe it's also possible to start with f6. I even think might be more, might be safer for black, because after f5, white also has some ideas like playing rook g1, trying, to play this type of position, because most of the time white anyways take gf, and it leads to the same position. But after f6, I think white can only try to sacrifice a pawn playing g6, but I don't see any danger with it. And otherwise, after gf, we transpose to this position. So more players play in f5, some play in f6, but most of the time white anyways takes gf. Bishop takes f6, and it's position to check with engine. If you are a strong grandmaster, if not, you can just play it. It's a complicated game. There was a very important game in this variation, Caruana-Mamedяров. I mean, important not even so much in theoretical sense, more in the sense of showing the main ideas. Here, Caruana played king b1, tricky move because main line is knight a5. And after knight f4, very logical played by Mamedяров, he went rook g1. Still not sure if he was better. It was very, very sharp, complicated game. Engines prefer to play knight b6 after king b1, because queen a5, knight c4, there is some long line which leads to a draw in this endgame. So knight a5, knight f4, knight c6, queen c7. This position can happen. It's always about equal, engine assesses, but very, very strange play, very complicated position. Sometimes black can take the initiative, sometimes white can get better. But with best play, it's probably dynamic equality. Knight a5 looks more logical, just to enter the knight with a knight, but then queen e8. And here, black is actually, you have this reverse scenario. White is playing on the queen side, black is playing on the king side. Because white wants to enter with a knight on c6 and, maybe to try to attack the pawn on d6. White is attacking on the f line, using the fact that he has more pieces on the queen side, on the king side. So all in all, complicated position. Let's say queen b4 is a critical move. Now bishop d8 seems to work. And very, very, you need to calculate a lot in this, if this position appears on the board, it's, for example, bishop c7, it's possible. Another rook f3, knight d6, queen e7, complete mess. Always when both players are playing best moves, I mean, in many different lines, first or second line, finally, computer always gives equal at the end of the day, but of course, position is playable for both sides. So knight h5 is doing pretty fine, I believe, for black now, but not so easy. You need to remember well, and still there is this position which I've just shown you, so white can play. It's a playable position. It's not a forced draw. But then b4, this is a very interesting, very, very critical move. And now, white has a choice. Knight a4 is nothing really. I mean, you need still to do some work with black just to make a clear draw here, but it's very forced. Queen takes b4, d5, queen a5 has to be played. And now I believe both bishop takes g5 and also queen a5, knight a5, d4, leads to equal position. I mean, white is nominally a bit better, but it's a draw. So this you just need to check with engine and to memorize. Then sometimes white is trying gf, and it's practically by force gets to this position, takes. Okay, black would be just better if white wouldn't be in time to pick up the bishop. It's completely forced. Queen a5, rook c6. And you can check, there were quite some games of guess whom Maxim Vachier here. I think this position is, black must be a bit accurate, must still make few accurate moves, but it's equal. So king b1, rook c8, for example, rook d2, and now knight h5 is important move to create some play on the king side. Bishop e2, maybe knight f4. I think there was a game Giri Vachier ended in a draw. So gf is also not given much for white. Then knight e2. This is a critical move, and now knight e8 is practically only move which is played nowadays. But I can advise you, actually, there is an interesting idea which has to be analyzed. Knight h5, knight g3. Of course, this is the idea. Well, actually, I mean, a5 is a real threat. a5, a4, b3. Black organizes a serious attack. So because white has to lose tempo, is playing king b1, knight c1, etc. Yeah? So it's a very, very direct position, actually. Just a matter of tempo. Knight g3, and now everybody, who played knight h5, it's considered to be a mistake, because now knight f4 was tried a couple of times, but white is again in time to be better with h4, a5, king b1, a4, and now knight d4. Very important move. And ed4, bishop f4. Still theory goes on a bit, but white is better. That's why knight h5 is considered to be a bad move. But actually there is very interesting, absolutely crazy move a5 in this position. This engine gives as a first line, I think, here. Knight takes h5, a4. Just like this you give a piece. Knight a1, bishop takes a2. No real threats. Black doesn't really have threats, so he's just, of course, knight on a1 is not great. I mean, this position is completely crazy. I don't know. It's so difficult to play it. I mean, objectively, white should be better here. I'm sure. But who cares about objective assessment if so you need to analyze it, I think, with either color, white or black, if you play this position. I think finally, after long reflection, I left engine here for 1 hour. At least my engine said bishop b5, first line, and then would give an assessment like 0-8 for white. So not like with extra piece, not like +3. So, I mean, black has his counter chances. So it can be an interesting idea if you want, to analyze with black and also with white. You need to know what you are doing, because it's difficult to play with this knight on a1. But probably objectively not sound. So the main move is knight e8, and now f4 is the main line. There is also king b1 or h4, a5, king b1, but this already sterilized to a forced draw if black wants. I mean, black also has some other options, probably dubious, but still. But this a4 is a kind of forced draw. Knight b6, very, very direct play. Or you can start with knight b6. Anyway, white has to go knight g3. So knight g3, and now this b3 maybe not too bad. Knight f5, ba, knight a2, you can take and d5. I don't know. You have to, in this position, what I don't want to give my analysis, not because, not only because I don't have them, because I didn't make a very serious analysis of this position, because now I'm not playing chess anymore. I don't have an access to a very powerful engine. Yes, since I'm not professional chess player. And here, actually, I'm just afraid to be misled, because the position is so complicated that even my rather good engine, which usually is good enough for most of the positions, here it can be misleading. Yeah, so that's why I want to leave, for the people who has very powerful engines. So maybe we will see. I'm pretty sure we will see some more games in this variation. But yeah, for the final conclusion. So I don't know if this, for instance, is it playable or not. My engine says that it's a little bit better for white, so it probably means playable. Maybe if I get Magnus engine, it will say +1. I don't know. I really don't know. So, but I'm talking about objectively, but of course, if you're playing club level, amateur level, of course you can play it, yeah, for sure. But the forced draw is d5, practically forced, because takes, ed, rook d8. All these variations of many games already. Bishop c4, knight c7. Black wants to take back, white has to sacrifice the queen, and rook d2, ef, king h8, rook d2, knight b5. Everything analyzed already. What to do, this is modern chess. Rook d7, knight a3 check, and you can push the button or check the games. It's a forced draw, basically. So king b1, it's nowhere there for f4. a5, otherwise white is better, because of course if ef4, white just gets his knight to d4. Yeah, I mean, the white's problem of the position is knight on b3. The black is really threatening a5, a4. Once ef, king b1, a4, knight d4, okay, white is just better. So a5, f5. And now, well, recently there was this game in the candidates, Firouzja against Nepomniachtchi. Firouzja played bishop c4 move, which doesn't look good. Also, he lost rather quickly, but I think he confused something on the board. But maybe it's working. I really don't know. I mean, it just looks so bad that and again, here you need very powerful engines to analyze. So I don't know whether maybe Nepomniachtchi had a better engine, or maybe Aririzov have confused something, but he lost rather quickly. So check it, bishop c4 maybe works, but I have my doubts. Then a4, this is the main move. And after now fe, actually knight bd4 is a very serious move in this position. ed4, knight d4, there were a lot of discussions about this position, because if bishop a2, knight c6, yeah, that's a problem for black. So usually black plays b3. It's a completely crazy game, yeah. For some of you who haven't seen yet this theory, I mean, this is really a variation with every move. If you don't know the theory, it's very difficult to find each of those moves, yeah. So b3, king b1 is the best move, bc, knight c2, and now the best move considered to be bishop b3, otherwise white is better. ab, knight a3, knight e5, h4, rook a5. And this is a very important position. Of course, theory still goes on. Well, for many of you, it's more than enough already of knowledge. Well, if you want, to know more, you can check the games. Finally, the assessment that black is fine here, that it's as usual. I mean, at the end of this very crazy, complicated game, finally it's a draw with the best moves. But if one of the opponents knows it, checked it with engine, another one didn't, then the chance of winning is very high. So, I mean, here preparation is decisive, the one who has better preparation. And finally, fe6 is move ab. Now ef7 is possible, but usually supposed to be not so clear. Ef king b1, I mean, absolutely crazy move, but the idea that black is also mating. White strategically is winning practically, but how to avoid mate? So then this desperate move, king b1, bc, queen c2, for instance. Recently there was a game, I think Duda with Vaitashik or something. I think this game, bishop g5, take, knight g3, king h8. Strange position, black is pawn up, white has a bit of initiative, engine says it's equal. Or cb3, fe6, and now, okay, you need to check this position. There were many games. Again, I don't want to give my verdict. I would have checked it if I would have a very powerful engine, but I know that it will not be totally correct, maybe my verdict. So better I let you check games. I mean, maybe some of you have very powerful engine. But in any case, for the professional players, I think most of them who are playing Sicilians, they already checked this position. We are talking about top grandmasters for sure. I don't know what is the assessment outcome of I think that according to the state of theory, black is holding here. And if you are amateur player or club player, I mean, that's already definitely enough information for you, so you can play. So that is f3 5. Well, I mean, black has quite a number of options. Positional, sharp, tactical, strategical, like this is very tactical. G5, knight h5 is more strategical. This h5, early h5 is a positional variation. Then some straight side lines with knight d7, knight b6. So big choice, very close to be fine. In general, I'm sure that in general black is doing quite well on f3, 5. He has a choice, and 2 or 3 systems are very close to be completely fine. But still, everywhere in every system, white has some tries. White keeps trying to get an advantage. The minus white's for white that he needs to know really a lot in this variation. So it's black who is choosing. The plus is that, if he knows a lot, black still has to prove, has still to show a very, very exact, precise equality. And in any case, in all of those systems, there are some positions, maybe only besides this, the last one, there are positions which white can play. I mean, which is maybe equal, but complicated. So that's it about Najdorf. That's it about the Sicilian. It's been quite some work for me. I hope that I think it was pretty detailed. I tried to give you a very detailed understanding of the Sicilian, not only of the theory, but also of ideas of Sicilian. So I think it can be useful for very different levels of players. Again, you can come back to this course later when you want to study a new Sicilian, maybe with black, or or another variation with white. So this will be at your disposal. Of course, the theory will slightly change, but the base is there. The base is solid. I was really honest. I mean, I was giving you really what I think. I mean, the real lines which I prepared myself and which I was. If I recommend you something, it means I would play it very likely myself. Yeah, so don't worry. You have the preparation level almost of Vladimir Kramnik, almost, because I'm not maybe so updated lately, and I don't have a very powerful engine. Still, it's pretty good. That was my goal. To that all of you who listen to this course, they now have hopefully quite deep understanding of many patterns in Sicilian, many ideas, and also a very, very advanced opening knowledge. So play Sicilian, very interesting opening, as you saw. I mean, so rich of ideas, so entertaining that if you are playing chess to enjoy, not to win world championship, then there is no better opening than the Sicilian's defense.